Ladies and gentlemen, we are back live here from the Story Tory in the man cave that is my basement. And today I've got as guests, well, first of all, I've got a kind of co-host today, somebody who you've seen before on this podcast, Garrett Atkins, who's here. And I also have the first ever guest of the Superhero Academy podcast joining us today, Phil Drolet, who's been a phenomenal friend, coach, mentor, somebody who has kind of been in my corner for a long time, and I've surely been in his too. And I've just been on so many different journeys ever since that first podcast, right? That was I don't even know what year that was, 2013, 14, something like that. So much has evolved in both our lives and all the different things that we've done. We've been to Colorado together many times. We've hung out in just kind of all kinds of different situations and grown as men in a powerful way. And I've always looked up to Phil in a very in just the quality of peak performance that he holds himself to and the standards that you hold yourself to, and also what you do therefore for others, right? And I think you and I see this in Garrett a lot too. You're the kind of person who very much wants to be better than the person you were yesterday, and you're constantly willing to question whether or not you are on the right path, you're trying hard enough, and or sometimes you're relaxing enough and you're balancing enough, and you're kind of pulling between the masculine energy of do and like achieve success, all those different quotients, let's say, and then the more feminine energy, which is relax, embrace, integrate, care for others and self. So thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you. I'm glad that we can do this in the studio.
Yeah, this is fun. I mean, I think this story, Tori, and this is something that you've probably known about me for quite some time. I'm a huge fan of Rogan, of course, and so this has been a long time coming in my psyche. But for whatever reason, I always made excuses as to like, oh, I'm not ready to do this yet. This isn't the time, or my podcast is okay, but it's not enough, or whatever it was. And I think I made it sometimes about the metrics or the quality of like the actual gear or all the different things. And I still think that a piece of that lives within me, and that's part of what makes it great, is that I do try and push some of these things. And at the exact same time, you asked me what's the intention with the podcast, and my true intention is literally to hang out and have more conversations with my friends.
Sure,
straight.
And we always think Rogan's living the dream partly because his podcast is so successful, so impactful, and it's like his favorite thing to do is just hang out with his friends. I'm like, this is the way to work right there.
Exactly. So, I mean, here's the thing. We've known each other for a while, but for the last while, you've been living out in Colorado. I mean, you've traveled the world and done other stuff, and we met up in Costa Rica for the mastermind and different things. But you're back here in Montreal and kind of have a new, fresh perspective on the Quebecois lifestyle, which I find super refreshing and interesting. As I grow more and more appreciative of it every time I travel. But Montreal has always been my home. So what's it like to come back to, I mean, you also grew up French Canadian. You grew up mainly speaking French. So what's it like to be back in Montreal? How's that feeling?
It feels incredible, and it's surprising. I did not expect this to be happening. My process of falling in love again with Quebec. Mm-hmm. And I had a bit of a glimpse into it 2 months ago. So my little sister runs yoga surf retreats in El Salvador, and she bought a piece of land there recently. She's settling down, decides to come back just for a month here in summer to relax. And she texts me. She's like, Phil, I don't know what's happening. I'm falling back in love with Quebec, but I have this piece of land in Central America. I don't know what to do. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I came, and pretty much the same thing is happening to me, minus I don't have a piece of land. But it's such an interesting thing of, at this point in my life, being here feels extremely good. All these little things, even things that in the past like annoyed me a little bit about the culture, now I'm enjoying deeply. Mm-hmm. So I think it goes to show the I don't know, kind of like circular nature of life. And sometimes we complete a circle or a cycle and we come back to the beginning with fresh eyes and fall back in love with the point we started. And I'm living this literally right now.
I'm super curious, Garrett, what's your perspective on Montreal as a location? Because the number of, I guess the way that I've seen Montreal has always been from the perspective that it's my home, right? It's the place where I grew up. It's the place where my family is. It's the place where the culture is intense in some ways.
Very much.
What does that look like for you when you're coming here? Because I know you're also considering moving to Montreal, or you're likely to move to Montreal next spring.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know much about Montreal until I was on my way here for the first mentorship about 2.5 years ago. I was like, someone was like, they speak French there, right? And like a little boy from the middle of West Virginia. I'm like, all right, I guess I'll go check it out. But the main thing that strikes me, and like as I've gotten to know the culture more, and as I've gotten to see the perspective of why it is the way it is an intense appreciation for art and culture and community. And I think that has to do with learning about the staying true to Quebecois, making sure that French is the predominant language used, and that also kind of keeps it as a place where you see most of the young professionals moving to Toronto, and that's kind of blowing up in the scene. You see like the professionals going over there, and this Montreal still stays a haven for artists, cultural, and the music scene, which is what I love, and specifically being a digital nomad of sorts, I can kind of set up shop anywhere. So I can really integrate into that. But yeah, it's very artsy, a lot of culture, but also at the same time it has that get shit done attitude that I think comes from the French side of this area.
Yeah, it does really have a lot of things going on at the same time, a lot of not conflicting, but converging forces of art and culture. And even for me, Québécois humor is like, I want you to see this French-Canadian movie, 1991, 1991. And half the jokes I was laughing, no one else was laughing. I was just like, it's so Québécois. And there's such a way that people express themselves. And then I was watching something on TSN the other day, and I realized, so TSN, for those who don't know, is the like ESPN for French, for English Canada.
Yeah.
And they're so much more polished. It's very polished, it's very professional. And then I tuned into RDS, which is the French equivalent, and it's a lot more convivial, I think, if that's a word, and just like kind of hang out, and they're not as polished. And I was like, I love this.
Yeah.
I think people here give themselves permission to be quite authentic.
Exactly.
Yes.
And a little bit looser with how to be or not be, just being themselves. Who doesn't like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's amazing is we do have a get shit done culture, but we step it down from like what I would consider to be more of like an East Coast vibe, where in like Boston or particularly New York kind of thing, it's like just like hustle, create, like, make, and there's this success notion that is baked into how much money you are making and what kind of valuation your company might have, right? And from at least my perspective as an entrepreneur, what I like about Montreal is like success is like, how much time do you have to like crack open a beer with a friend? It's kind of like, it's seen differently. Like people, we're all like, not expected, but we all have like this like, oh, it's Oshiaga. Like, of course you can't expect me to work this weekend. You know what I mean? Like we all have this vibe where we kind of really respect the boundaries of the weekend. We respect the boundaries of what that, looks like. And what's so ironic is that I kind of moved away from that. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get ahead, And now I think in my life, this studio setup is a testament to that. I'm like trying to relax. I'm trying to like really integrate and move into hanging out more, just like chilling a little bit more, being more mindful of my time and how I'm spending it.
Well, I'm back now, so even more incentive to hang out. And it's right there. It's really just a function of plugging into that social matrix, because there's stuff happening all the time, especially in the summertime.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big element too. Montreal in the summer, like we were talking about earlier about Australia. Australia is amazing. California is amazing. Places where it's summer all year long don't have the same sense of urgency in the summertime. Like yesterday I was driving and I saw a couple leaves are starting to turn. And I'm like, oh man, I got to do stuff. Winter is coming. And that's actually a good thing in a way. And I found the same thing in Vancouver to be true. In the summertime, people are really jazzed up, and it's like, hey, let's head up the beach, let's have a barbecue. And it gives a sense of urgency that is not present elsewhere. So We got about a month left right now, guys. So we gotta. I'm going
That's
camping
so-
later today.
That is so true that there is a culture that is very much affected by the fact that winter is coming.
For sure.
Like even that joke being in Game of Thrones, right? Like, and it's not really a joke. It's like, winter is representative of the death is coming, right? It's the kind of proverbial way of expressing it in that series. But it is very true here too, because winter is very, very difficult psychologically. When I think about Montreal, it's like the November comes, all of a sudden it's gray, and just you have like 4 months of grayness, and there's lots of sunshine. And Montreal is like one of the sunniest cities on the planet, but during those months it's not at all, right? And it just gets grayer and grayer, and the days get shorter, and you just want to hole up. And there's a reason why many Montrealers have gotten into hockey, and then they cling to the TV a little bit more and to sports or to particular things, and like the mood of the city literally completely changes whether or not the Canadians have won or not. It's insane. Like I've never been a part of a culture or seen another culture where that's fully true. You know what I mean? Like where there's one thing that just really rallies the whole town. Like, you know what I mean? And there's lots of people outside of that bubble, but it's still a thing. I definitely feel it to be true.
For sure. And winter brings about an interesting psychological component. Like you say, it's the thing. Like if it's cold and it's dark and the short days are short and everyone's a little bit of a, like, not in the best mood, hockey becomes that light, which makes it that much worse when the team is not very good, like it was the last few years. But I think what adds to the charm of Montreal as well, and I'm starting to appreciate this more, is the fact that we do have winter. It forges people's character in a fundamentally different way than someone who grew up in California.
Totally.
It just does. And I think it kind of humbles us. And while giving a bit of a rugged side to it, and there's a bit of a toughness that's there, like a little bit of a grit. I think that's the right word. Like it humbles you and it makes you more gritty, which I think are two qualities I enjoy in people. And people in Montreal have that. Like we have to.
Yeah, you have brought something in some of our coaching sessions that you've said to me many times over, and some of the things that stand out are, for example, life's a marathon. So why are you running? Like why are you sprinting? Sometimes, right? You specifically me, but also you've brought in the concept of seasons, seasons of life, right? And we forget, like, we enter into a house and there's a roof over our head and nature isn't here and there's not bugs crawling all over things and you don't hear the birds necessarily. And that's unfortunate in some ways, but it's also fortunate in others. But the reality is that we are creatures of nature, and nature functions through seasons, right? There's a flower that flowers at a particular time of the year that doesn't flower at another time of the year. And in and of itself, those seasons are constantly shifting and changing. And if I know you, if I've seen you as you go through some of the journeys, whether when you're going to Peru or you go to all these different places, you have always, interestingly enough, had a lot of seasons. And I've seen like clear demarcations of some of the seasons that you've had in your life. What are you feeling like that's looking like right now? What season are you in right now? I know there's lots of life changes. You're back in Montreal, of course. Where are you at right now? What has kind of transpired in your career and in the season of your life in general, and in the last little while? I mean, I guess over the years.
Right now feels like March. The transition of winter to spring, I can feel it. So I've the past 2 months, lots of deep inner work, lots of less work in the world, like just winter and kind of building myself up. And I feel like the upgrades in my, I guess, consciousness and just how I navigate the world. And I'm not quite ready to come out yet and like build something big, but it started to tickle at me a little bit. Like I can feel it and I'm like, no, not quite the time yet. But I do feel like when spring comes, maybe a month or two from now, and I'm like, all right, I feel good. And so much of what I do is a function of who I am. So there's always like the winter, which is I almost go and deconstruct myself and build myself back up. And for a few months, I'm not in a place to create publicly and to share. I don't want to be a teacher. I can coach because that's different, but teaching is more of a summer activity, right? It's when you're strong and you're clear. in the winter, I build myself back up, and I allow myself to be messy and to be a little bit confused about what is what. But that also is what allows me to have a significant upgrade, so that when spring comes, like, hey guys, I figured out some things, let me share it with you. And it also brings about good stories of like, Phil was in the cave for the past 2 months or 5 months. Here's what I figured out, guys. And I think it adds a little bit to the mystique of my work and the narrative of it, of like, hey, I just came back from Peru. I was in the rabbit hole. Let me tell you what I figured out.
It's true. I do want to know the wisdom that you pull out of the rabbit hole. And I think, like, even from the outside perspective, you don't speak to Phil all the time, but you probably are curious about, like, okay, yeah, he went on that, like, crazy plant medicine journey or that crazy thing. Like, what does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, and the interesting thing about Phil is that his balance with social media, where everybody is always rushing to get something out, everybody's rushing to be seen. You have constructed this life where you play by your own rules. Where it's like, okay, I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to try this approach where I'm going to have this website. I'm going to have the audio over the blog, and it's going to be this new approach to it. I'm going to go strictly email. And it just makes every interaction that much more precious of what it is. And also that control of your life in terms of social media carries into all aspects of your life, where you search for optimal balance, not for everybody, but for yourself, which is very inspiring to a lot of people. Myself specifically. But I'm always interested in what crazy adventure you're going to go on next. Because like the first time I met you, you're like, just got back from Bali. I was learning about tantric practices. I was held up for 2 or 3 months there. And it's like, okay, interesting. It's like, all right, now I'm in the mountains of Boulder, Colorado, going deep into rewilding myself. It's like, okay, what is he up to next? And how can I learn specifically what he's going deep into, and how can this be an inspiration for myself to go into something completely different, but just that inspiration to go deeper into oneself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at a meta level, I do want to inspire people at least to consider the idea of having seasons in their year and allowing, it's almost like most people's lives that become a little bit like a 24/7 news cycle, right? And because we're less connected with nature, it's like, we hold ourselves to the standard of being in summer mode, which is producing and being outgoing and working a lot all year long, which from a Taoist perspective and from just a natural perspective, it's not how we operate as humans. Like, we need to have periods when we're a little bit more introverted. And in Montreal, it creates that naturally. Like, we're going to be a little bit less social in the winter, more social in the summer. But I think we all need to give ourselves permission to go through a month of not being on social media, which is the easy one, or a month of travel. Marc, in your case, doing a cleanse for a month. That will put you internally and spiritually in a different place than usual.
Yeah.
And I love that you're giving yourself permission to do that right now. I'm curious, you're just starting out. What you think that will have as an impact on what season of life will that create for you to be, I don't know, not eating a whole lot of food?
Oh man. Well, so food this is a big one, right? Because for me, food was always the thing that I kept, where I was like, yeah, I'll change everything else, but not this. So this is like the last, like, this is a big pillar of like my old world. You know what I mean? I mean, even yesterday he came in and last night, and we went to go see Jesse, who's a videographer on our team and great friend as well. And, he's like, okay, cool, let's go eat. Like, maybe we'll go have a poutine. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. You know what I mean? I'm like, not eating cheese, not eating gluten. I'm not eating sugar right now, like beyond like natural, sugars for certain things. And I'm doing kind of a parasite cleanse and all this stuff. And it's the first time I've ever said it and meant it. And so, in that regard, I'm actually in the deep of winter right now.
True.
Yeah. I'm in the deep of winter on me changing my body, changing my whole physiology, because, and this also is coinciding with my transitioning into my 30s. And transitioning into my 30s has now been like, okay, for my 20s, I was adventurous. I was brash. I was kind of like fiery, and I made lots of very quick snap decisions. And I'm also able, and then I also kind of had that same mentality in my food, right? Like, I wasn't like a fast food guy in the sense that I would like, I care to eat McDonald's all the time, but I'm a fast food guy in the sense that I like eat standing up at my counter sometimes.
And it's pure function. Just put fuel
Exactly.
in the body, got to keep working.
Exactly. It was purely a functional thing, and if I can remove that function and stay focused in my flow state of something different, like editing or on phone calls or whatever it is that I'm creating, then that felt like that was the highest excitement and the most important, potent thing that I can do was stay in that state, in the other state, and completely ignore everything, like literally cooking anything ever. Like, no, seriously, like I'm like really bad at that. Really, really, really bad. And I'm totally willing to admit it. And it's oxymoronic because I'm the guy who was like, let's go out into the middle of a GMO cornfield and plant a tree and like build an organic farm.
And be conscious about it and respect our food.
Exactly. So the oxymoronic element of that is so funny. And it's right now I'm in the winter of closing all those gaps. And so if I had to say what season I'm in the season, I just entered winter, and I'm probably more of like a November right now. And I think that over the next couple of months and over the actual winter, I'm going to be in much more of a personal journey, slow down, rethink the processes, like literally shut things down so I can boot them back up. And certain little things I have are in like a little bit of a ramp phase, like Superhero Academy is in more of a spring right now. But for me personally, I'm in the winter side of things, and I think the wisdom that's coming to me from that right now is, or what seems true for me to do, is that I should also look to deepen some of my skill sets and determine what's renegotiate what's non-negotiable. Right? And that's, I know, a term you definitely have championed a whole lot, is this idea of not negotiating on some of the different things in our life, and recognizing, like, for example, working out is non-negotiable. Eating healthy can be non-negotiable. And so even if you have all these things that are keeping you busy, and there's always a reason why you have to, quickly do something, you can bring it back to the baseline of, oh, wait a second, what is non-negotiable to me, and then how am I making sure that I'm staying in integrity with that?
And that's stuff that you got to build in winter. When there's a little bit less going on, you can go within and slow down and think about life from a more strategic standpoint. Like, what are my priorities? What am I going to... And deepen your own wisdom, because you're less giving yourself to the world.
Yeah.
You're keeping your energy for your own transformation.
Yeah.
Which, like a butterfly in the cocoon, it's messy and it's no one can see it. It's going through its own process, so it can come out as a butterfly. Well, we kind of have to go through that and give ourselves permission to be messy and to be in the cocoon. And, it doesn't have to be like this extreme version to it. Like, we can still work to some degree, but the priority is still kind of turning the spotlight on us. Yes. And I think there's a not an expectation, but a bit of a narrative going on in the world where we're so outward focused through social media, like displaying what's going on. And when we display, we want to display something that's quite beautiful. We don't want to display messiness.
Yeah.
So I think taking a break from that and be like, all right, world, I'll see you in a month. I'm going to go deep and I'm going to create the next version of myself.
Yeah.
Is a beautiful thing. I know it works for me. I love it. And it's cool to come back on the other side and be like, what's up, guys? And I wish more people would give themselves permission. So I love to hear that it inspires you and that it inspires you, Marc, as well. Because I want that at a meta level to be something that is a little bit more accepted and celebrated. Because even for me, you still have to give yourself permission to do that, because it's unproductive. If we look at the strictly, kind of business-like approach to productivity, like, you're not creating anything, but you're creating yourself, which is the most important thing. So there's a bit of a paradox going on, and it allows you to create that much better work in the future.
Yeah.
But for a while, you're not gonna, crush it. But that's okay. Long game, marathon. If we're only thinking about just next month, it's always gonna be a short-term approach to life, and I think that's limited.
Yeah, and if you're operating from specifically trying to be the most productive and put the most output into the world, if you truly think about it, taking the time to work out, eat healthy, have time to grow, that's when you're going to work at an optimal level. as opposed to always pushing yourself and kind of having one foot in, one foot out, half-assing it, not being fully present in the moment, then you're kind of lying to yourself and you're being productive for productive sakes. But if you really think about it, if you really get down to it, taking the time to improve yourself is going to bleed into all aspects of your life, including work.
For sure. And going through these periods, like right now, I'm working maybe 4 hours a day on average, 3 to 5. It's not that much. And I'm only working when I'm like inspired or I have a few calls. So I'll do like, let's say 3 hours of inner work in the morning, meditation, journaling, reading on the balcony overlooking the lake at home. It's awesome. So my main piece of work is my inner work. That's my number one priority. And then after that, I serve, I help, I have coaching calls and things like that. Then at night, I socialize. And what's going to happen is that in a month or 2 months when spring comes, because I'm not working that much, I'm going to be hungry and rested. And I'm going to bring my 100% of myself to work. And I think most people are unaware of this, but they're always operating at like 60 to 70. But that's just, the way they feel, that they just think that's normal. But then like if they were to take a month off and really rejuvenate, they would come back and experience themselves as a whole different level of performance and focus and clarity. I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. But we need to give ourselves the permission to experience that and trust that if I take a little bit of time to myself, I'm going to come back that much stronger.
Yeah.
Because when we're at 60%, we think that's the 100 because that's just what we're at every day.
Yeah.
And
then we're thinking that 50% is like, oh, we're at 70 today. Right? Like,
Yeah,
you know
the
what I mean?
whole
Like
scale is
the scale
skewed.
is off. Yeah.
And I know when I take these extended breaks, like working at 100, and if you're listening to this, like think when's the last time you've showed up for work consistently, like so inspired and so like you're just rolling through a day and everything's working and you're on fire. Like I like to think about when you play Mario Kart, when you got a star, you can like cut through the grass and bump people. It's hard to maintain that. Like, of course, there's going to be a bit of a tapering off effect, but for like a month or two to be like, oh my God, I'm on fire about life. And then you get on a sales call, like your energy is so magnetic that of course people are going to want to work with you. And you show up to a meeting and they're like, it just completely changes essentially your vibration that you're putting out in the world. And then you attract a whole different set of things.
Yeah.
That just does not happen when we're a little bit exhausted. And I think most of the world is chronically exhausted, at least partly. Maybe not chronic fatigue, like can't get myself out of bed, but definitely not on fire about life either.
Oh, I'm 100,000% in the exhausted camp. I couldn't. It's like there's certain pieces like even challenging my diet, for example. I couldn't challenge my diet because I was literally too tired. Like it sounds crazy to think, but I was literally too tired to try and even consider what that would look like, how I would do it, what that would, you know what I mean? Like, and it was just, and it's because I burnt out. If I'm really honest about how I felt over the last 2 years, it's been redlining, pure redline, to the point where my body is showing signs of it. I have like psoriasis on my head, so like on my scalp, so like my back started. I got like a fungus infection. They're just like little spots. It's nothing hideous or anything like that, but there's little signs that are basically saying your belly and your gut isn't processing properly. That's what it's saying, and you're processing too quickly. And if I really think about it, my adrenals are just like full on, like no stop every day, nonstop, like till the point where literally sometimes I would pass out working. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm like just answering an email, boom, passed out, and I thought I sent it, and like when you're really at that point, you're like, what the fuck am I trying to like really do? You know what I mean? Like, why is this really what I want to be creating? And for a while, I think for a long time it was awesome. And now that I've kind of recalibrated and like reclused a little bit, I removed certain projects. I was like, I have to say no to more. I have to like really help build. I have to put other people in the leadership positions. I have to just transition myself out of these different scenarios. I feel more and more empowered to rewrite my manifesto. And when I say rewrite my manifesto, there's the manifestos that I've written for the companies and the flags that I create, but then there's the internal manifesto of what is it that I'm dictating my own life by and what is guiding me. And it's getting back to that.
And doing that in winter is perfect. It's when we slow down and we can look a little bit differently. Like we're not so much in the fray and we're like, all right, like what is my life about?
Yeah.
Arguably the most important question. And it's hard to really ponder that when we're rock and rolling, 8 meetings a day and like where are you going to find the depth and the energy to figure out like the larger questions in life?
Yeah.
And taking time in winter to slow down, ask yourself like, what do I want my 30s to be about? Who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? What is this game about for me? And how do I create that? Like big questions. You start to come up with your answers. And then in spring, you go build a business and a life that reflects that. And that's super exciting. And that will run its course, and then like a year later or 2 years later, the cycle comes around again and like, oh, back in winter. And we're so, the 3 of us, and I'm sure most people listening to this, we're so growth oriented that we need to go we need other winters regularly to pause again, be like, man, that was true for me 2 years ago. And now it's not anymore. Who am I? What is my life? The same questions again. And the answers will have evolved. And then we need to like deconstruct and reconstruct again. And that's how our life can really evolve and reflect where we're at, deeply. And I'm glad. I'm curious, Garrett, when you think about your life,
I was going to ask
where are you on the cycle?
Yeah, it's definitely a winter for me as well. I would probably say February. It's like the coldest of cold. Like it's been leading up to it. A couple things have shifted in terms of projects I'm working on. Some of them are in like a really good place where it's kind of like slowly but surely building up. Everything is going well. Like Superior Academy, it's kind of we're putting everything, the pieces together, and like you can foresee the future. It's looking bright. And then other projects that I was working on, we kind of like reshifted them where I have a lot more time to kind of really think. And some of the things I was doing were taking way more energy out of me than I thought they were, and it's more obvious now. And I just kind of see the different things happening in my life of like getting on an airplane. It was supposed to be a 6-hour trip, turned into a 26-hour trip, and just like losing my credit cards. And like everything just seems like a little bit off. So I'm kind of like, okay, I look for the signs. Everything has a meaning, and kind of be like, okay, how can I adapt to that? And how can like I could pick up on these signs and not push through it, but give everything space of like, okay, I recognize that this is a time where I need to give myself more space, realign, and then like really just know that I'm in the heart and the thick of that readjustment, where it's kind of like, I'm not letting that get me down. I'm just kind of realizing it is for what it is. And then knowing that right around the corner, spring always comes back. The flowers always blossom. But I just want to be prepared to make sure that they can truly take off in a powerful way.
For sure. Well, when I see you, you've probably completed one full cycle of being in the world working.
Yeah.
Like it's been a couple of years that you've been in the game. So it's the perfect time to be like, pause. Okay, I've experienced myself as, an entrepreneur and a contributor to, a startup and organizations. Like, okay, pause. What have I learned? Where is it aligned? And where do I need to rebalance? And now you're going to create cycle number 2, which is even going to be more you, and you're going to be more powerful. And it's okay to be in that period. And I think those little signs of misalignment are so if you're listening to this, like really check in your life, do things feel flowy or are things a little bit clunky? And it's really feeling, but if you pay attention, you'll see it. Like I was telling you guys before we started, right now, things are so serendipitous in my life. Everything clicks into place and it's just like, oh my God, like this is awesome. But it wasn't like that a few months ago. Yeah. So that's how I know that I'm coming into spring. I'm like, okay, finally, things are just like working effortlessly. But a few months ago, it was the opposite. And it's hard when you're in it. You're like, what do I have to do?
I know it's right around the corner, but please get here.
Yeah, exactly. I have faith, but
it's losing.
Anytime now, I'm ready. Except you're not, and that's the thing. If the caterpillar was to try to leave the cocoon too early, it would die. Yeah. Like it literally would not be able to fly off. It'd be like a half-formed butterfly. And I think that's where we all get a little bit impatient, and that's where I want. And that's a cultural shift I want to bring to embrace and celebrate the cocoon a little bit more and be able to support one another and to give ourselves permission to be in it. And that's also where not being on social media is so important, because social comparison kicks in pretty fast. When we're not producing a lot and we're like in the thick of it and you see like your buddy crushing it and doing, you're like, oh my God, I should be doing webinars.
We're always comparing ourselves to summers or springs.
Summers,
Yeah.
because that's what gets displayed.
Seen. Yeah. And it's the most magnetic. It's the thing that it's not even like, it literally naturally does the best online.
Of course.
Right? It's just, that's what happens. I mean, if somebody's positive and light and fluffy and interesting and whatever, that does really well. And the only other thing that does really well is actually deep winter too, weirdly enough. Right? And it's like, it's fall and spring kind of are interesting, but people, we don't pay attention to that as much, but we really kind of honor, and we can feel winter, and we're like, ooh, like, you know what I mean? Like you look at a picture of Montreal in the winter and you get a little shiver, you feel that a little bit.
Yeah.
But the truth is that, those two things actually perform incredibly well online. And it's, to me, it fits the narrative of the awe-inspiring and enraging. Those are the two types of content that go on viral online. It's the same thing of the seasons of life. When somebody's in full summer, they tend to be awe-inspiring. They tend to be magnetic. They have that vibe. And in winter, sometimes you can imagine, it doesn't always have to be enraging, but it could also be very sad or very tragic.
More heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Like,
tragic or
feel
heartbreaking.
something.
Exactly. And sometimes it's enraging, and sometimes it's whatever. But it evokes an emotion that is like, oh, that's not, nobody wants that. Nobody feels good in that scenario, obviously. I agree with what you said about how Garrett, in my opinion, is now is like coming out the other end of when I first met him.
Yeah.
When I first met him, I would have said that he was in like around a March state as well. And he was just, like I can see where that was. And I agree that you are going through that first, like, this is the first time you've done it as on a career level where you are living on your own terms. And then like kind of figuring out, okay, like what is me, what isn't me? Okay, I did this kind of work, I did that kind of work. I kind of like this, I kind of don't like that. Like, how do I recalibrate and reconfigure? So I agree. Like, I do agree with the February analysis for him.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. Whenever I'm in the thick of winter, you're going into it, you're in it. It's these periods of reinvention where there's a lot more uncertainty, right? We're not like on a clear track as much as in summer. Like you're launching your thing, like this is your life. And the winter is like, I don't really know. And it can be unsettling. But my sister told me this years ago when I was going to Peru, and I was like so in the thick of it. She said, when nothing is certain, everything is possible. And that's a fun thing about winter. It's like you don't know how it's going to blossom. And things are just ready. It will get ready to be reborn. In what form? We don't know. And I think it's important to just focus on the excitement of like, hey, right now I have a lot of leeway.
Yeah.
And I'm not limited by my former choices or my former self. Like, who do I want to be? What do I want to create? And in this day and age, we have so many possibilities. So allowing ourselves to like put away the blinders and really think through the whole spectrum and then land on something and then go build it.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was working through this exercise with Kevin, who's my coach that I'm working with him about 3 weeks now. We're going through the RPM model where it's like reward, purpose, map, action plan. And eventually like we start with the result that we want, and then we kind of see like why we want the result. And then we start at the beginning of like how we can achieve that. When you were saying that, it kind of made me think how we were working through that process. And if I were to stop at the first 3 action plans I would have had, I wouldn't have seen my number 1 action plan was down like 15. Or you keep on like going down, you go down further, and I'm able to go down more rabbit holes because I've given myself more space to see the possibilities out there, as opposed to pick up and go, but kind of like really letting it sit on it and allowing yourself to be open to not just the first thing that comes into your life. Kind of resonated whenever you're saying that.
Yeah, exactly. Just slowing down a little bit, taking greater wisdom. I was thinking about you, Marc, this week. I was reading this book, and it talked about decision making, and they studied people who took one night to think through a decision versus those who like were more impulsive. And it was like definitive that people who had one night to think through the challenge came back to it and much better. And I liked it on a micro level, like just taking time to sleep on a decision rather than be like more brash, but also on a more macro level, like just taking a little bit, just slowing down a little bit. I think in our younger years, it's easy to just be like, go, fast. And as we get a little bit older, it's like, just slow down a little bit, like slow down 10%, and be a little bit wiser. You know, when we think about the image of a sage, like an old sage, they wouldn't be described as like fast.
No.
You know, they're slower, but man, that one decision, that one thought is so profound.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they had to move fast, they move fast in the perfect moment. Like,
They strike,
you know, they strike like they just have that. And it's the contrast of, wow, they normally move so slow. They normally are so graceful and whatever. And then all of a sudden they have this, they pick their moment for that thing. I find that so brilliant. You know, and I think, you know, if you're, you know, somebody who's watching this, if you look at it in terms of sports, right? If you swing at every pitch, if you try and Hail Mary every pass.
Poker, same thing. If you play every hand.
Yeah, if you play every hand in poker, you're done. You're a rookie. You're the noob of the game. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole thing. You have to let the pitches come by, let them, okay, I see what you were doing. Okay, that's what your fastball looks like.
Yeah.
That's what this you know, the defense is going to do here. And then they test it out. You're chipping away at it in a way that's so that's more systematic.
Yeah.
And when you're systematic, that's when you become, that's where true greatness is automatically viewable, right? You look at a Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or whatever in NFL terms here, or you just look at anybody who's been great, Muhammad Ali or whatever it is, they're waiting for their moment. You know what I mean? Like, even what's the difference between the way Conor McGregor was and Floyd Mayweather was in that fight, right? We're all Conor McGregor fans. The idea of, well, what was really true is that Conor had less experience, he maybe less conditioning in terms of cardio, but he gassed out quick. Yeah. He went for the big punch and he went for the knockout, whereas Mayweather, at the end of the day, his strategy was weather the storm at the first couple of rounds and then, you know, pick him apart later.
And train his computer to compute what is Conor's movement. And by 4 rounds, and Floyd Mayweather is probably the best boxing computer of all time.
Totally.
Once he like cracked the code, he's like, all right, now it's over. It's game over.
Yeah. And he luckily had almost an entire career that way.
Yeah.
And that's why he's undefeated.
Yeah.
If you really consider that the people who tend to do the best tend to do it first by having phenomenal defense and then having really good offense, it's a very interesting way of operating. And for me, that is a massive slap in the face, and I'll tell you why. Most people know me as being really good at offense, and offense is marketing. Marketing is an offensive strategy, right? Like, there's a lot of defense in it too, and I'll explain that in a second. But the idea is, marketing is I get your attention, right? Oh, capture attention, and then siphon it in a particular way, right? And not always to sell something, just sometimes just to show something and to display something, to evoke, you know, a story that might matter, or that might shift culture in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't always have to be conducive to sales, let's say. But if you really think about it, if you just go out and you're loud, but then your walk doesn't catch up to your talk, or if I got my attention, then I come to your sales funnel or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it's kind of all janky and weird, and it doesn't really communicate, and it's not clear, then it doesn't work. So you can have all the numbers in the world in terms of attention, but if you don't have the substance behind that, the defense, right? And I take this from a friend of ours, Nick Koyama. He says, oh, you got to make video that has offense, which attracts attention, and defense, which once they come to your show or to whatever it is that you're showing, how are you proving what you're doing?
Yes.
How are you backing that up? How is it not just a house of cards? And so that is very interesting for me. And so I feel right now in my own life repulsed by marketing. For my 20s, I learned a lot of things. I did learn a lot of like the real stuff, and I learned a lot of like the flash in the pan, how to get attention, how to do all those things. But now it's time that for me to work on my magic again.
Yes.
You know, if I'm a magician, I have to get back into the grind of doing hours and hours and hours of like, you know, of shuffling the cards, hiding a card, like moving you know what I mean? Like I literally have to go through another 10,000 hours. That's how it feels right now.
And prepare the next show of the next season. That's going to be that much better. But for a few months, you're like, I'll see y'all later. Like, I'm going to be in my basement working on my tricks.
Yep.
And that's, you know, once again, the value of winter And when I look at the last 4 years, and this is something I've been banking on really strongly, is this idea of like, if you build a really strong defense first, which in this case, in my work, like that's developing my wisdom, my presence, my self-mastery. If I do that now, I'm going to have the benefits of that for the rest of my life. And ultimately it will differentiate me in the marketplace.
Yes.
And I'm going to like being me because I will have done my work.
Yeah.
And I've not really had a choice. It feels like the universe keeps, it's hard to explain it. I keep checking with myself and feeling, oh, I got to go deeper. And it's not because I'm avoiding work. I'm not afraid to work. I'm not,
Of course.
I like creating, and that, through the feel good lifestyle, I had many years where I was like creating and being really out there. And then it's like life just keeps me moving back inside and inside. And now I feel like I'm finally coming out of it. And I'm so excited to see what I can create and play the game of business after 4 years of such deep inner work and things I've never talked about publicly, of like what it felt like to go with it and to heal trauma and to feel all these like parts of me that were repressed, and to do like really deep, challenging work to come back to wholeness, like super freaking messy. And most of it people never saw. Like when I'm in my bed doing trauma release exercises, which means literally inducing shaking in the body so that like traumatized energy and stuck energy can be released through the shaking. Like that is the thick of winter right there. Like I will guarantee you that you don't want to go share with the world and teach when you're in your bed shaking like a leaf, releasing trauma. But if you're willing to do that, and we're still young, like the game is still, like, I'm going to work well into my 70s. I'm extremely confident about that. I still got more than 40 years.
That's
so if
crazy.
it takes 1 or 2 or 3 or even, God forbid, 4 years early on in the game to build a good defense, to get kind of like the fundamentals before adding some offense, so be it. And that's what I'm banking on. And I'm excited to see over the next decade, like, was I right? And I didn't really have a choice. It felt like what I needed to do anyways. And we all have our own path. But I feel like in a world where there's more flash and more sizzle, those who have the stake and then can have like decent marketing on top of it, will win.
Yeah.
Because everyone's just out there, in summer all year long. So the few people that have gone through winter, and I think when we meet them, we feel like, oh, there's a deeper thing going on here. Like, what's this? How can I have it?
Yeah.
And so I think it'll be exciting to see, and I hope that there's people out there that we haven't even heard about, that will come out, in the next year or two and be like these amazing teachers, because right now they're deep in their own work.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen a little bit with Jade Shetty. Like, he's gone through a pretty big winter when he was doing the monk thing.
Yeah.
And then he comes out and puts good marketing on top of it and blows up.
Yeah.
Because he's at a different level than most people his age.
That's so true. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a, and by the way, if you put the mic down and to aim it up, you might be able to, it might like block the view a little less.
Oh,
yeah.
there you are.
So I think the interesting thing about this narrative is that it's not heard enough, number one. And some people are trying to like yell it from the mountaintops. I feel like the Gary V's of the world are actually are saying this, but they're just saying it in a way that sounds like summer. Yeah. And you just tighten this up here. You're going to unscrew that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it sounds like summer in the sense that he's saying, put in the work, eat shit for 10 years in your 20s and like just learn
Just
and
do something.
Yeah. Exactly. And then the reality is that he's not actually saying be summer. He's saying, no, like go deeper, like really put in your 10,000 hours, like really learn the craft, like eat, like understand that you're not going to have the flash in the pan is going to be bullshit. And I shared a video. Yeah, I was about to share it. And give him some context on this video. I'll come fix your thing.
The only passive income video that you should watch, and basically it's saying like, if that's what you're going for, you're completely wrong. The only like real passive income is in real estate or investing in like stocks or kind of the market and something like that. And he's saying like the only people getting rich in the passive income world are those selling you on passive income essentially. And those people are like working their ass off and guarantee that anybody that is making passive income on the beaches of Mexico has put in thousands of hours. There's no direct jump from 9 to 5 to on Tulum at the nicest resort. It just isn't possible. And to think that way is kind of ridiculous. And to have that mindset of that's what you're working towards in terms of just luxury is the wrong mindset, essentially. It's like the people who have the possibility to achieve that are the type of people who do want to put in the work, who do see something bigger than just that transition.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you want to, he's like, if you're interested in seeing money on the bed, he's like, I can find all the people that went to their bank account, withdrew all their money, took it to their house, threw it on the bed, and then ran to the bank like a little kid, like kind of covering it all up to deposit it back again. So it's like, it's all just a show. Yeah. Anybody can go and buy the yacht and hire the models to come out there and get that video. But
and the thing is,
not real.
yeah, and Instagram culture, like even when I listen to tropical house music, which is, I like on YouTube, it's always the same kind of videos. It's like people in bikinis at the beach, and there's like, you know, Alexi Ren and these like Instagram model chicks that are like, you just see everywhere, and it looks good, right? I'm working and I'm like trying not to look at the video, like, oh, I should be on the beach. And it looks great. It looks beautiful. But I've lived that life. You know, I've been on the beach in Thailand, and I've done all that, and it's great. But you can build anything you want. You can't run away from yourself.
Yeah.
You can have the money. You can live, you know, all this stuff. You are still stuck with your own thoughts. You're still stuck with the tension in your body. You're still stuck with your insecurities. And, you know, I think there will be the first generation of the first group of our people in our generation are probably coming to that realization now. Like, they've won the game of like the 4 work week and everything. And it's like, oh, that's cool. Damn, man, I don't feel that good. I'm not that happy. Now what? And that's where I'm hoping to come in and be like, cool, well, hey, I've kind of taken a different path. Like, I might not have as much money as you do. I might not have as cool a car as you do. But I've been focused on something else, and I can help you with this, which is internal mastery and really like being happy with whatever's happening around you. And it's such a different inclination and a different approach to life. And I think few people have focused on that, and many have focused on the external.
Yeah.
Because that's what's glorified. But we all know it's, you know, it might be better than the 9 to 5, like the old dream that was, it's like, oh, I'm going to become like VP of my like Fortune 500 company. That was the original dream. Now it's like, oh, I'm going to be able to work from the beach. It's cooler, but you're still going to run into the same problems.
Yeah. And I think that kind of realizing that thought, especially whenever you're in the winter phase of everything like that, and you're kind of really refocusing on what direction you want to take in life, is to like, what I advocate is to be very strict and to be very forceful in where your attention goes to. And then if you just kind of leave it up in the air, it's kind of the saying, it's like, if you're not controlling your time, somebody else is. If you're not controlling your attention, somebody else is. So to make sure that you're finding the right places, that you're catering the algorithm, that you're catering the books you're reading, that you're catering the documentaries that you're watching, that it is creating that lifestyle. And that's why, like, I don't look at Mark Zuckerberg for inspiration. I don't look at Elon Musk. I do in a sense of something like that, but I look at people who have kind of honed their craft, and maybe they didn't like burst out with that book until they were 40. Maybe what it is. It's kind of like somebody, I'm not looking at the people who were brilliant. It has nothing to say with somebody who does take off when they're 19 or 18 years old. Good for them. That's awesome. But that's setting the bar for me. It's kind of like I passed that phase of my life. Like, I don't need to look at that. I need to like look at how I want to project and how I want to like live my own life. And that's in a way where it's somebody who has honed their skill. It's somebody who's focusing on the creating. It is somebody who's focusing on themselves, not just who's got a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you know, we live in a day and age where the expectation to succeed early in life is greater than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the past, like, it was accepted that you're gonna, you know, hit your stride like mostly in your 40s and then your 50s. Like, that's kind of where you're at the top. Now there's been just a few people, and Zuckerberg's the classic example. We've seen the people succeed at 24. So it has skewed our perception of like, how successful should I be by now?
Yeah.
And I know that that's a big thing that we need to unwire, to be willing to go in the winter, because we're kind of like running a little bit away from traditional success and external success. And if, I know for me, you know, like when I start to go deep, like in Peru in 2014, I was 28. I had to like accept that like, it's okay if I'm not a millionaire by 30.
Yeah.
And I don't need to do that. But that's also why I had to kind of turn off social media, because if I saw the people doing it, then it made me wonder, like, am I on the right path? Like, I should be doing more. I should have more by now. But if we zoom out and think about life as a long journey, and we think that the goal, like realistically, our most impactful work should come in our 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
So when we have most experience, best network, most capital, like we're at our best in our 50s, and hopefully in 60s we're still feeling great, and maybe in 70s we start to land the plane. Okay, so how do we set up the game if we're trying to peak in our 50s? Even though everyone around, it looks like the game is to succeed as much as possible today. And like, 28 or 32, well, it's important. Like, we still need to move forward. But if you're trying to peak at 50, does that change how you live today? Versus if you're trying to peak today and tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what you focus on maybe changes a little bit.
Patience. It's a marathon.
Patience and a little bit more depth, and maybe a little bit less frantic output.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit more like, all right, like who do I want to be at 50? And how do I need to build myself up right now? And for me, that's one of the things that motivates me to meditate. Like, meditate is not productive. You're literally just sitting around with your eyes closed, like you're doing nothing. But it's rewiring my brain.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing investment in the future, in my future brain. Like, it literally is giving me a better brain for the future.
It's a non-monetary investment.
Yeah.
And we don't value the non-monetary investments as much in our culture as we should. And I say should very intentionally because we really do need to rehash and recalibrate what success means. I think for me, the reason... what's funny is, like, I don't give a fuck what other people are doing, entrepreneurs are doing. It's so funny. Like, I really don't. I couldn't care less what success they have. Like, I just don't. I've never, like, I don't look at Elon Musk and I don't marvel at, like, oh, he's got a lot of money. I'm like, well, whatever. That doesn't, what I like about him is, oh, he's got a lot of, like he's got a way of thinking systematically that challenges back massive problems, and he's willing to bet it all.
Yeah.
And I love, and so every person I've ever, like, seen as an idol of sorts, right, that I don't know, is, like a Peyton Manning, for example. Why do I love Peyton Manning? It's not because of how many rings he has. It's or that he's famous. I don't care about their fame. I care about, like, how meticulously he practices, because I know what it takes to throw that spiral every time, like that. You know what I mean? Like, and the timing and the fact that, like, he was the only quarterback at that time, and almost really still today, that was basically the offensive coordinator and the quarterback in the same position. There's nobody in the history that is calling the plays on the field and running the play. You know what I mean? So, and that's just such an interesting approach. So I think that where I did suffer the most amount of trauma from a achievement perspective or a success and a monetary perspective is actually my parents. And I think it comes from deep, traumatic, almost like ancestral poverty. My parents and my family was dirt poor, like stupid poor, like
Growing up?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then moving to Canada with $100. Like, imagine you went to Australia right now, or you went to Italy, or let's do the reverse. You went to Italy right now with $100 in your pocket, and you had to, like, start a new life. Yeah. That is crazy. Like, they legitimately came with $5 in their pocket. $5 at the time maybe is worth about $100 today. That is, and they left a war-torn country. They left trauma. They left all their family. They had land. They had the land that they were working. They didn't own the land, but they had things that they were participating in, and everybody they knew was from, like, one, like, the way that my on my father's side, for example. My grandmother grew up on one side of the valley, and my grandfather grew up on the other side of the valley, and they met at the river. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they met in the middle, kind of thing. And then on my mother's side, my grandfather was in the Italian army, but then when the Italians switched over to the Allies, he got imprisoned in France by the Nazis and was, like, in jail for years. You know what I mean? Like, and then like they put a gun to his head to the point where they're like, you're gonna go and, like, fight the people, and he refused, because he's like, no, I'm not gonna kill the other Italians. I'm not gonna kill other people. I'll stay in jail. Kill me. You know what I mean? And then when he's released, has to walk home. You know what I mean? Like, has to straight hitchhike, no
It's
support.
like 60 years ago or 70
Yeah,
years ago, right? It's not that long ago
It's
in the
really
scheme
not.
of human history.
Yeah. And so when you think about that, most of why I want to be successful is actually it's not even that I'm worried about my own finances, because I'm like, oh, I know magic. So if I know magic, I'll always have reactions.
Yes.
And if I always have reactions, I'll always be rewarded for them. But what I feel what I felt I had to do, I'll use those words, is I had to honor my parents. I had to honor their legacy and all the things that they did for me, because I lived the exact opposite of that life. I was thinking about it, I think it was 2 days ago. I was telling Samantha, I made a joke about like, oh, there's no like meat and cheese in the fridge, which is the thing I love. Or there's not like grab and go food in the fridge. And I was like, it's challenging for me right now, And as I'm going into that, I'm like, I don't really know what to do. And I'm like, maybe we should just make little fruit bowls. So at least here and there, I could feel like this is quick and easy and whatever, but it's still super healthy. And the reality was that I told her, I said, I've never been actually hungry. I've never starved, like really starved. Because I came upstairs and I was like, oh, I'm starving. And then I kind of like walked that back and I'm like, no, I'm not even fucking close to starving.
Yeah. I remember saying that in my first year of college. I had a guy on my floor from Nigeria. And I was just learning English at the time. And I learned that sometimes when you're really hungry, you say, I'm starving. And I remember saying that to him, and he looked at me, he's like, really? Like, and his understanding of starvation was so different.
Yeah.
And I remember that moment, I was like, oh man, I'm never going to say that again. Like, it is so inconsiderate and inaccurate. He's like, I'm starving. No, you're not.
Yeah.
You're fucking not. And so anyways.
And it was just, it's so, that feeling of wanting to honor the people who literally made it. They lived the fucking dream, man. Look, we're sitting in the house right now that my grandfather built, that my parents designed, that like, you know what I mean? Like I'm here now, and they're now, downtown, and they're doing the thing. And I feel like I'm still in this house. And then somebody, Samantha was like, well, why did you feel like you had to like move back home? You left home, you lived at Valhalla and all these things. Why did you have to go back? I'm like, because I had to do winter. I had to heal this thing. And I had to build this, I had to recreate this environment here so that it became mine. And now I can reclaim my own, like, I feel like my 30s are going to be me, not me proving to my parents something.
Yeah.
Weirdly.
And it's interesting. I was talking to my coach this week, David, about how it's almost like in this hero's journey and in this journey of transformation, we need to leave home. At least I think it helps a lot to, like, for me going to Australia, I got to experiment with different ways of being and test things out. But now I'm coming back home, and it's like mastering myself in the context of being in Saint Bruno, in my hometown, where all the environmental cues are so much stronger. Like, it's easy to be someone else in Bali.
Yeah.
But then to do that when you're at home, and they always say, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your parents.
Exactly.
To come back and then to actually be masterful in the environment that like brings back all these old patterns and all these triggers. And so I think there's a part of the journey when eventually we come home, whether it's permanent or temporary, where it's like, I need to connect with my roots and you being in your childhood home of all places.
And the answer is that it is the story arc. We know this is the story arc. It's the hero's journey, the return home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually in that return. And I've done the return when I did it in a small way. When I like went to Australia, and then I learned like, oh, I could tell stories. And then I went to China, and then I realized stories aren't just words, but they're also symbols, they're colors, they're expressions, they're tonalities. Because I didn't understand anything the Chinese were saying, and nobody understood what I was saying, but I could still communicate with them. I was like, oh shit. Like a hospital sign looks similar in China as it does in America. Right? So realizing those things, I came home, and then my whole thing was, I found my freedom. Let me come and help free my friends.
Yes. And maybe even your parents.
Yeah.
I'm like my mom's spiritual teacher in some ways.
Yeah. And that first journey was a journey of, I found my freedom from the 9 to 5. I found my freedom from one thing, but I didn't find my freedom yet from the thing that I'm finding freedom from now, which is, oh, I don't have to eat the food that my parents fed me all the time. Mm-hmm. I don't have to do it the way my mom does it. And Samantha sees my trauma the most because now I live with her, and I live with her in my childhood home, which means that, and much of the furniture is still here, right? So when Samantha does particular things, I can hear my mom's voice or my father's voice about particular things. Like the grass gets long, and I'm like, oh. And Samantha's like, oh, the grass is so beautiful long. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to get in shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so in my mind, I'm literally like, I have these internal dialogues that aren't mine.
Yeah.
And so the internal dialogue of, oh, I'm 30, maybe I should own a house now. Or, oh, I'm 30, I should, like, why aren't I doing this thing? Or why haven't I done that thing? You know what I mean? Like, whatever that might look like, right? Like, I'm a 30-year-old and I don't have a car. I've never owned a car, ever in my life. I've had access to cars. I've paid for parts of a car, but I've never had a car fully to my name that I would say is my car all the time. And I'm like, for part of that feels like I'm a failure, right? But that's just not true. I actually don't want a car. I've spent enough money and equipment in this room to say that I could own a car if I wanted to in a heartbeat, and I can re-earn this money in 5 seconds and own a car tomorrow if I really wanted to. But I don't want to. You know, I realize how much I'm reprogramming the things that I would consider to be success back from literally childhood. Of what that looks like and the questions that you ask, you know, that people would ask of you when, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, and then if you gave an answer, my answer was, I want to be a superhero. And like they laugh and chuckle and they were like, well, don't you want to be like a lawyer, maybe like your dad? Or, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, fuck. And legitimately this week, I had the thought, I was like, what if I just asked my dad to like, maybe I'll do a job with my dad do it for 6 months, make a bunch of money, and then like do it. And I went through the process of like, so I meditated on it. I went through the process of like waking up in the morning, hitting the alarm. All of a sudden I have an alarm. I have to, because there's no way I don't if I work at a law firm somehow. Weirdly enough, you know what I mean? And then I was like, I have to put on a suit, which I never wear suits. I'm like, I don't even own a suit. I don't even know where to buy a suit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, and then immediately, like, I hit that thing. I was like, nope, can't do it. And I'm like, so I am living on my terms. And it's recreating and reliving. I was like putting myself in different shoes and saying, could I really do that now? You know, now that I'm 30, could I live? Could I work in that way?
But it's living on your own terms,
yeah,
in general speak. But then another advantage of winter is like being even more granular in the ways in which you are not living on your own
exactly.
terms. Like you can have it on the macro, like I have my own business, I work when I want. Okay, cool.
Totally.
But then when we get more nuanced with it,
yeah.
Okay, well, you said you wanted to honor your parents, and that's part of why you've been working really hard.
Totally.
Are you really living on your own terms, or are you living a narrative that is descended from your grandpa in the concentration camp?
And that's the whole point.
And when we start to really examine our own consciousness and our programming, it's like, man, that shit runs deep and wide, and there's so many pieces of it, and to really like turn every stone and unravel what's there and create our own truth like across the board.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of time and energy, and it's just like, and some of it is so pervasive we can barely see it until we're really like, oh my god, like I have these glasses on and they're so close to my face I can see them.
Yeah. Thought it was normal. You just like think it's just the way of life until you kind of step out, return home, and being able to do so in a very authentic way. It's like, that's when I know that I've kind of done a full transition of my hero's journey, whenever I'm able to return to my own home and then still stay true to my authentic ways, my habits, the way I show up in my optimal situations, whether that's like in a mastermind or whatever we do, where like I feel like I'm truly in flow. I feel like I'm living my highest excitement and nothing can kind of break through that. And as I continue to return home, it's kind of like the first time I went back, it was like back into old habits, old ways. It's the exact same person. And then it's been slowly, each time I come to visits, like, okay, it steps up a little bit. I'm a little bit different. I'm able to control myself in these different ways. I'm able to have conversations that are directed more into what I'm interested in, as opposed to like just other people. And I'm not to that level yet, but that's like one of the epiphanies that I've had recently is like whenever I can fully show up, and you were saying this earlier, it's like whenever I can be my true authentic self in all situations, regardless of the environment, that will be a huge win, and that'll be know that I'm leveling up in some way.
For sure. Yeah. And then to be able to do that, at least for me, part of the work is then to be fully yourself and fully accepting of other people that are doing
Yes.
it very differently from you. So it's like, I'm cool with myself and I have full love and respect, and I might try to inspire if possible, but no preaching, no. When I came back the first time from Australia, like my first like round, man, I was such a
always the case.
judgmental asshole that time. And I was like, I'm enlightened. Y'all don't know what's going on, and it is my job to educate you on the ways of the world. And that did not go over well at all. And then, like with every round, you start to realize, like, okay, I can maybe help and educate, but it's not through preaching. And some people will do it completely differently, and that's fine. But I will not dilute myself to fit their expectation, but I will not try to make them fit my expectations.
Yeah.
And then we can all cohabit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even that, there's a lot of like subtle dynamics.
That backwards piece, right? You don't mold to them. That's one way. That's the macro way. But you not being affected by how they are and saying like, look, man, this is your choice is your choice.
Yeah.
And I'm totally cool and I honor you in that. And beyond even honoring you in that or just like ignoring it, like being like, oh, I can't be your friend. That's one way of doing it, but that's an avoidance. It's no, I can actually appreciate you in that. I can appreciate your perspective even if it's radically different than mine. Yeah. And so, I think that it's also important, and this is something I feel is lacking in, and unfortunately, the rabbit hole that is social media, is that social media has created these deep, deep, deep holes of silos, echo chambers, right? These deep, deep echo chambers that then allow people to think that everybody thinks the way they do. And so if everybody thinks the way you do, and then you're like really good in that one sphere, then you think you're king.
Yeah.
Right? You're literally going around life and being like, I'm the king of this thing, and then everybody should just listen to me, and or my flag or whoever I'm with or whatever it is, right? But when you remove yourself from that, and you're like, I purposely watch Fox News every once in a while, just clips of it, just to see like what is the other side of this narrative, right? And I don't say the other side as in I'm the liberal side. I watch CNN and think they say crazy shit. I watch Fox, I think they say crazy shit. I don't subscribe to any of them, right? But the idea of understanding those narratives, no matter what I subscribe to or unsubscribe to, is interesting. Because we're in this culture where we're choosing we choose what we like, but we're not really being forced to see what we don't like anymore.
Yeah,
definitely.
And that's challenging. I think we used to like butt up against that a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like if I lived in a town and I grew up in a small village in Italy.
You saw everything. You were interacting with just about everyone in the village, and you saw the whole spectrum.
And you can't ignore the bully sometimes. Like you have to deal with some of the bullshit of the town. Whereas now when I'm behind the screen and all I'm doing is watching the things that I want to watch all the time. Yeah. And I'm not even am I choosing to do that. Now the algorithm is choosing to do that. It's like, ooh, shit. They should almost code into the algorithm like and here's the counterculture. Here's the things you didn't want to see. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there should be a mode. Like, legitimately, there should be like a thing that says, here's the algorithm for you, and then here's like, turn off the algorithm for half a second.
Every fifth video is like, we will challenge your thinking by showing you the different perspectives.
Yeah, you know what I mean? They almost have to like build that into the AI. AI got too smart.
Yeah, it's one thing to even just log into YouTube and like not plug in your login account and to see what the like
or
the
somebody else's.
Like, I want to see what
YouTube. I'm like, oh, this is what they recommend to you.
Yeah, it's like, ooh. Or if you're typing it in on if you're on like a Google Fire, like a Fire Stick or something like that, and you try to type in like Alan watches, for example, and Alan walks in the park and steps in a pile of dog shit and gets fallen over. It's like that's the first thing that pops up.
Yeah. The search terms and the algorithms would be so different.
Yeah.
If we were in another shoe or if we weren't logged in, if they didn't have that data about us, what would that do? And so it makes me think about the responsibility that tech companies have. And this is a very, very potent question right now, obviously. Is it a utility? Is it not? You know what I mean? And they say utility as in like electricity is a utility. Why? Because now our entire society functions on it to some degree, at least here in our culture. And so it's like you cannot deny somebody electricity. You literally cannot cut the power. Even if they didn't pay their bills, you cannot cut the power on them here in Quebec. Why? Because we determined that is literally inhumane. That is a version of like you cannot do that.
Yeah.
Now, what you can do eventually is create scenarios where they have massive consequences and they won't have access to power and they'll have to figure something out. But you cannot just cut the power because they didn't pay the bill.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, and so we're in a time where a new utility has come to life, and we saw it flourish, and we now are seeing it weirdly mature. And as it flourishes, the freedom of it was wide, but as it matures, it actually contracts, and the power siphons back to the top in a weird way. And I believe that we are in a massive version of that contraction in the social media sphere. And then the question is, well, okay, every time that's happened, it happened in radio, it happened in TV, now it's happening in social media. What's the next one? You know what I mean? Like, what's the next thing that we're actually all going to pay attention to? And I don't know what that answer is. It will be another
virtual
version.
reality.
Yeah, maybe. That's what a lot of people thought it would be.
Fully immersed.
AR too. You know, if you don't want to go full virtual reality, if you don't want to go full, like the Facebook is on your face, you know what I mean? Then the other version of that is like, okay, now we're going to compete in the real world again, all over again. But now you're just going to have the technology on your glasses. You're going to see little things on the desk, or when you walk down the street, the ads are going to be different for you. You know what I mean? Because it's going to recognize while you walk by the ad that you're a male, tall male, white guy. Your ad is going to be different than the person who's walking right next to you, who's like a female, African American, in their 40s.
Sure.
And that's the reality we're headed towards right now in a very scary way.
Yeah, and I think it begs a question like, okay, so there's these macro trends that are happening that we don't really control, but we control how we interface with it all. And if we recognize that, man, I got to challenge myself to keep a broader perspective, to not be in my echo chamber. Like, we're all at the mercy of that. And I like, Garrett, when you said earlier, like in the winter, we get to reprogram our mind and choosing the people we listen to, the books we read. Like, it's literally like choosing the building blocks of your own consciousness. Like, what experiences do I want to give myself, and how can I expand my perspective? And, we've talked about travel earlier, and I'm curious if there's anything that you're doing consciously to make sure that you're keeping a broad approach and not zeroing in on like the world of entrepreneurship and, like whatever little sphere that you're most intimately connected with.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's there's a couple things I do. It's try to I've eradicated some of my timelines on Facebook for like some of the browsers I use to kind of like completely use Facebook just for work purposes, because that's one of the main things that like I spread stories on. And then what I also like, one of the rule of thumbs is, because you can get very complicated and like instead of being very specific, one thing that I think everybody can do is kind of lean into what makes you uncomfortable. And what makes me uncomfortable is meditating. What makes me uncomfortable is taking a break from the computer to go run 4 miles. And whatever that may be, I try to lean into that a little bit more and push myself and not think from a place of what's going to give my body pleasure, but what's going to be best for my not like what's going to be the easiest, but what's going to be the most productive for that.
What's the right choice, not the easy choice.
Exactly.
Yeah, and meditation is so interesting because in so many ways it's the antidote to like all the noise and all the echo chamber. It's like turning off the noise, and like the Buddha was talking about that like 2,000 years ago. It's like the more you come within, the more you can see the illusions around you. And I'm like experiencing that, and year after year as I meditate more, it's like I walk around and I see a little bit more of the illusions that are there, like the matrix, so to speak, and the societal ones, but also the ones that we all have. Like, okay, the ego, we all kind of know conceptually what that is, but like year after year, like seeing my own ego a little bit more clearly, like, man, okay, this is happening, and this is how I can see it for others, and how we're all like being caught up in that. So yeah, I think we all have a personal responsibility to know, like, okay, I am being presented this perspective. how do I stretch it out, and how do I challenge myself to stay open-minded and to always see both perspectives? And it takes tremendous mental discipline. Like for you, going running and meditating is to consciously not just go down a little rabbit hole and look at other perspectives. I think, Marc, you do that really well with documentaries.
Yeah.
It takes mental discipline to keep ourselves broad-minded and to be in this place of, I don't know, it's complex. It's not really this. It's not really that. It's, I don't know. It's complicated. Our mind always wants like the easy, like this is how it is. We all want that, but it so rarely is. Like things are complex and nuanced, and we need to have the maturity intellectually and somewhat spiritually as well to be like, I don't know, but I'm going to keep hearing different perspectives. And hopefully in this room, you will have conversations with people who might not agree with you and vice versa.
Yeah.
And hold each other with respect. Like, I don't know, it's complicated. Let's talk about it. Let's try to figure it out together.
So you mentioned the documentary thing. I'm done watching documentaries, and I'm not saying I'm not going to ever watch a documentary, but I'm no longer doing. So I capped it off. I did 8 years of watching a documentary, watching TED Talks, or listening to audiobooks or whatever it was on topics that I would consider to be problematic, let's say, in the world. I am completely done with that martyrdom of a process, but the also enlightenment of that process. There's a beautiful side to all of that.
Sure.
And I've chosen that my next one is comedy. Right? Like, it's like, now how do I take the entire spectrum of all that is negative and actually understand that comedy is a form of healing to that it's an antidote.
Yeah.
If I can laugh about something, even if it's tragic, I can process it. I can actually unlock a barrier that allows me to process something and heal the mental neurological pathway that I have created for that thing. And if I can laugh at, like, you know, for example, like, put it this way, just make it super real, right? My parents will, you mentioned, you know, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your parents. Great. If you spend some time with your parents, they are the people who could trigger you the most, right? Like, I would suggest, like, they're honestly definitely up there on the list for anybody. But can I now find humor in the things that trigger me?
Yeah.
Can I see the other half of the equation and recognize that part of the solution beyond just do, which was my 20s, you know, make the solution, literally create the solution, now is a understanding of not so much do, but literally just absorb and repackage, recreate, retrace what it is. And it's not it's, you know, part of me actually fought against that for a little bit as I was like understanding that this was something I wanted to learn more. I fought against it because I felt like I was just giving up. Part of it, when you're saying like, oh, well, you know, you learning about the vanishing of the bees, you don't have to go start some beehives. You don't have to do that. You can just make a joke about it, right? That feels like it's a cop-out to the actual doing. It's a cop-out to the solution sometimes. That's what it felt like. And in some ways, in some narratives, that's true, right? If it's only true if I'm not being a part of any solution. Because I think that the truth for me was, I want to live the 4-hour work week so that I can do 104 hours. You know what I mean? Like, you know, in a weird way. So that I could do a bunch of different 4-hour work weeks, not so that I can have more time to process and be in my own winter and in my own space, but more so that I could just do like, oh, I'll do a 4-hour here and I'll do a 4-hour there and I'll do a 4-hour there. And then I'll still have a 12-hour day job. You know what I mean? In the funniest and strangest of ways. And so the capacity for us to celebrate that sometimes the answer isn't that you have to do something about it, but that you can create awareness of it. And if you can repackage it, this is what I'm learning now. If I can repackage it and make it lighter, if I could take something that's super heavy, expose you to the heaviness of it for a second, but then immediately after wipe it away with a joke, then in and of itself, I'm actually healing the planet. I'm healing myself. I'm healing the heaviness that I put on my own back and that others maybe have on theirs. and it's a collective heaviness, right? If I mention something like, I don't know, a traumatic event like I don't know, a 9/11, there's a heaviness to that many, many, many people in the world will carry. But if I can make a joke about it, I'm not trying to devalue it. I'm actually trying to remove a brick out of the backpack that you're holding that says that thing. And I'm trying to say, hey, I honor it, I remember it, I allowed you to remember it, and now I allowed you to reframe it. Mm-hmm. And that is in and of itself the NLP technique of like, you know, I one of the first things I did one of my first hero's journey when I went to Australia is that I read the book Neurolinguistic Programming for Dummies, and I learned about this technique where if you had a trauma, you can imagine like, okay, live the trauma in your mind, full color. Now imagine yourself in a theater, sitting down in the theater, watching the trauma on a screen, full color still. Now start playing with the colors. Remove the colors. Make it black and white. Try and remove the sound. Turn down the sound. Or completely remove it. Now start moving your consciousness to you watching yourself in the theater, a couple of rows back, watching the trauma. Then go for you completely watching yourself in the theater, not seeing the screen, but watching your reaction to you watching the trauma. And you're removing yourself further and further and further and further from the trauma, not to negate it, not to forget it, but to reprogram it to say, yes, that happened. Yes, that's a reality. And here's what I learned from it. Here's how I can take it away and understand that this created some tragedy, but also some comedy or some understanding, a deeper, further understanding of my world. And that is a process that I have just now associated to comedy that I find very intriguing and interesting.
Yeah, and the key to, especially if you're gonna like laugh at yourself, and you talked to me a little bit about how you're seeing that your first comedy, I guess, routine
Has to be about me, yeah.
and you have to be able to observe your own patterns, the ones that are brilliant and the ones that are kind of dumb, and make fun of that.
Yeah.
But that's really powerful because that right there is awareness. Like our ego doesn't have a grip of it as long as we can observe it and see that we're doing that. Then it's just doing what ego does, but we're not in it.
Yes.
And comedy is forcing you to observe yourself and observe your reaction to different things, which is like the key to spiritual maturity.
Absolutely.
So in a way, it's helping you heal the planet. It's helping bring light to these things that can be heavy. And I think we've kind of completed a healing journey. It's like if the three of us had something really like crazy happen to us, like we were in a car crash together, the day that we can laugh about it, I think we've recovered. Like we're good.
Exactly.
Same thing with like a breakup or thing, like those really difficult things in life. The moment we can actually start to find humor in it, okay, I think we've like dissolved the charge in the body.
Yes.
I think maybe comedy can be a vehicle for that.
And that speaks to the idea of like, okay, so the two people that fictional characters that I've idolized are the James Bonds of the world, like James Bond narrative and the Batman narrative. And both those narratives are tragedy played out in badassery, but not in healing. Batman and Bruce Wayne have not healed. They cannot joke. And that's the idea of the Joker. The Joker in and of itself is the antithesis of Batman because he cannot joke. You know what I mean? And I was like, holy fuck, dude, I had this fucking realization. I'm like, dude, that's fucking brilliant. He had this Batman had story, very quickly. Traumatic experience, parents get killed. He's left with everything, but doesn't know how to operate it. Has a mentor, has all the characters that are in a traditional hero's journey, but hasn't returned home. He has not. He's tried to return home. He tried to rebuild home. He tried to keep his home exactly the same. And every time it burns down, he rebuilds his parents' home the same way it was, but with slightly different variations. But he's never fully let go of it. He cannot joke about it. James Bond, same thing. He fell in love. The woman he loved betrays him. And whatever. And then she dies. And then he's now a womanizer. He's the exact toxic thread that continues, but then just says, I'm going to turn my toxicity into badassery, and I will be. And then Batman, the very famous line of Batman is, sometimes you live long enough, like you can be the hero, but sometimes you live long enough to be the villain. And I really truly believe, now that I really look at Batman and James Bond, they haven't healed. Now, let's fast forward to 2018. 2018, one of the biggest superheroes on the planet, Deadpool. Deadpool has a tragedy. His thing burns. He has his skin burnt, and now all of a sudden becomes a superhero because he becomes a superpower or whatever thing. And he did it because he wanted to help and do whatever. Point is, his style is lead with comedy. The comedy is actually deprogramming elements of his trauma and his pain as he's going through it. And so weirdly enough, I was like, oh, I don't have to hold on to the fact that the world has fucked up and has a bunch of fucked up shit. I could point it out like a good superhero does. I can be a part of the solution like a good superhero would, and I can laugh about it. Like an enlightened superhero would, like a child superhero would, not like the lion superhero would, right? And there's this idea of like, I had this very good conversation with Jesse, and I would kind of try to bring it up with you the last time we spoke, but I actually went back and read it. There's 3 states that we could be in: camel, lion, childlike state, right? The beginning camel is, we're gonna try and learn and pack in as much as we possibly can onto ourselves, into our careers, into our ideas of self. We're going to consume a bunch. That's what a camel will do to some degree. And in the weirdest way, they're going through the desert, and they're doing it without water or very little water, because essentially they're starving themselves of what a lion sees. Now, what a lion sees is this idea that they see the illusion of being a camel, and then they have power and influence over the camels. They have controlled and contrived their environment to now say, yeah, I have a 4-hour work week, and you can too. And then they're selling something. They're playing this narrative where they are better than others, that they understand something more than others. And they've used their curiosity that they had as a camel that transformed them into a lion to become an ego. And the transition from lion to child is that you are reimagining that your ego, that you are essentially, it doesn't matter. That no matter how big you're anything, it doesn't matter. That no matter how much control or how much better you are than the camels, that doesn't really change anything. That the only thing that really truly drives your greatness is the willingness that you are to have with yourself and the world around you. Your curiosity about yourself and who you are and the way you think and the world around you and what you think about the world around you and how you receive the world around you versus judge the world around you, which is what the lion was doing, is returning back to the core essence that it actually makes us truly magnetic. Because I see many entrepreneurs and people who say, I was a camel, now I'm a lion, right? And then they go all the way, their whole career, like Donald Trump to me is a classic lion.
Yeah.
Totally. But he never really matured enough to get back to the other state, which is the childlike state, which I do see in a bit of a Jay Shetty, right? You mentioned him earlier. I do see that recalibration of, yeah, but I'm here to have fun. I'm here to inspire you. Yes, I'm here to tell you about things that are negative. Yes, I'm here to inform you certain times, but I'm also here to laugh. I'm also here to play. I'm also here to just be.
Yeah, I see that a lot. And I think more and more I'm called to teachers, and David Cates, I was going to say shout out, but I don't think he listens to the podcast. So
Either way,
energetic
shout out.
Yeah. He's like one of the wisest dudes I know and one of the most playful dudes I know. And literally there's this childlike energy and I'm drawn to that. It's like, yeah, let's progress, let's evolve, let's think about consciousness, and let's have levity to it. And on YouTube, there's a lot of people doing great stuff and they're teaching all this stuff, but there's just this like somewhat still frantic energy.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're on the right path, but like, I want you, but that has just lightened up a little bit. And that's what enlightenment is, like lightening up, seeing like the game is important and it's still just a game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've all been in the game and being like, this is life. And it's just like,
And,
all right,
and you
cool.
wanting to win.
And wanting to win. And it's okay to want to win.
Yes.
But let's still remember, it's still just a game.
Yeah,
But-
don't take it so seriously.
Yeah.
That's whenever you can think the clearest as well. And that's what the
Yeah.
beauty of comedy is. It's kind of like you bring something to the table, and like most things in life, whenever you break it down, it's kind of like comical in a sense. Like, okay, we've really gotten to this point. And whenever you lay it on the table like that, then people can come to the conclusion themselves, which is at the end of the day, the best way to actually change minds and change hearts is for the person to do it themselves.
Yeah.
You can't force it. And like what you were saying, you came back from Australia, and I think everybody comes to these transitions when they're waking up or whatever we want to call it, whenever we're making that big level up in our life, is we want to come back and let everybody know we found something amazing. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. I found it. Otherwise being like, this is all funny, and like, is this really what we're doing? And like just laughing at it. And then people come to decisions like, yeah, no, this does make more sense doing it this way. And helping people to guide to make the decisions themselves, because just like as we personally know, the best way for us to make impact is through changing ourselves. And that's the best way for other people to do it as well.
Yeah. And recognizing that, yeah, it is like the cosmic joke. Like in my moments of most clarity, like when I'm really centered and I like just walk around the world, I'm just kind of chuckling to myself, like we're all in our own little world.
We're all in it.
We're all so caught up, and it's like, yeah, some of it is real. Like, you know, you got to feed yourself, and there's real. And our ego just has a tendency to take things more seriously than they are. And like, oh my God, like, am I going to run out of money? And is this thing going to work out? Oh my God, I have a date tonight. Like, oh, they're going to like, okay, relax. It's all good. And for me, I keep coming back in moments. If I tighten up a little bit, just, it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. And from this place, if we genuinely know and believe that it's all going to work out, well, then let's relax a little bit. Like, let's chill. It's cool. We got this. All right, let's have some fun and let's follow inspiration rather than being this place, this lion energy of like, I must do this. It's so important. It's like, yeah, well, sort of not.
Yeah.
And I love when I watch sports and seeing the like top athletes in the world, even like recognize like, and it's just a sport. You know, we take sports culture as this like really important thing. Yo, you guys are just playing a game. You know, you're throwing a ball between each other. Like, that's important. And it's fucking not. So let's keep things in perspective.
Yeah. It's important to play. It's
Yeah.
just important to show up. You know what I mean? Whether Conor McGregor wins or not, I respect him because he showed up and he tried. And that's what's in this of itself is inspiring. But what we do, and we have to honor that we want to see people win. Right? Like, we have to
I wanna
honor
win.
that. Yeah, of course.
If we wrestle right there, right now,
Yeah.
I guarantee I'm going to try to destroy you.
Yeah, absolutely. And good on you. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to win, but if you tense up and you let winning become the only thing that matters, then in and of itself you are literally destroying the fun out of the scenario.
Yes.
And we've all remember that. Right? Like you surely played hockey when you were growing up in the street or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I just signed up to ball hockey Kazum. I'm starting next week, and I'm so excited.
Are you ready? Seriously?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. On the roller skates?
No, Kazum. So ball,
Okay, yeah.
ball hockey.
Purely, okay, yeah, because sometimes they have roller skate ball hockey, and then they have the shoes. But yeah, okay, ball hockey. So, but we all remember a time where you had, like, I don't know, you play a game, pickup game with your neighbors or whatever it was, and there was this like one kid that just like was doing everything to win, and when it wasn't going their way, they would like slash and like be like aggressive. Yeah, and we've all been that kid for sure, and we've all known that kid. And it's so funny that when we are that kid, we're like, oh, we just have to win. But then when we see that kid, we're like, yeah, man, just lighten up.
Yeah, chill.
And I think that the cosmic, like, you know, again, just quick little Batman reference, like the line of the Joker in the latest series of Batman is, why so serious?
Why so serious? Yeah.
And it's so funny that we think that what we have to learn is from Batman. Right? Like I honored one side of the learning, which is what I was saying earlier. I honored the learn of the like. What is it that I like? I like Batman. I like this thing. But I wasn't honoring the message of the other side.
Yeah.
And the other side is Fucking Joker had a lot of shit to teach you too.
Yeah,
and as much as he's the villain, he's actually the hero. He's in a weird way part of the hero in some way, shape, or form. Because when putting those people in the situation on the boat there, where one boat is filled with prisoners, the other boat is filled with innocent people, civilians, quote unquote, right? Which one of them is going to turn the key first to blow up the other boat? Which one's fair? And that's this whole scenario, and then. Batman is like, no, you don't understand, Joker. Like they're not going to blow each other up. Like we have a humanity to us, and what I associated is that Batman had that wisdom. Therefore, everything Batman does is wise, right? But the truth is that it is in and of itself the situation that Joker made that also in and of itself allows you to have that wisdom, that allows you to foresee the wisdom that is coming, because you cannot know how you react to a situation or to a negative until the negative happens. So it is important that there is as much dark in the world as there is light, because without the darkness, we don't know what light is. Without the rain, we don't know what sunshine is. We don't know how it feels. And this is the whole thing of the seasons we were talking about. Without winter, I have no idea to how much I can respect my spring, summer, and fall.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so excited about these little blossoms coming out in my spring, and I'm like, man, I have been in a long, deep winter, and now going out and being social and just feeling all my different capacities coming online. I'm like, oh my God, I appreciate this so much, and I needed to be in that winter. Speaking of which, I do have to get ready to go to camping soon.
I was about to say, yeah, we should start wrapping it up. So if there's, anything that you, I don't know, want to say, or anybody wants to contact you or anything like that, or anything you want to leave this podcast off with, by all means, go for it.
Trying to think about something wise.
Yeah, take your time.
Where to bring this all together.
Yeah.
But I think, if you've listened to this, well, thank you for hanging out with us. And one, recognize where you're at in your seasons and give yourself permission to be where you're at. And if you're in summer, we've talked a lot about winter today. If you're in summer, like, enjoy this and embrace this. And in a few months, like, be willing to recognize when fall starts to come, and be willing to adapt, even if we are in this artificial environment where it seems like it's supposed to be like summer all the time. It's almost like a biodome. But life is not like that. That's artificial. Like, there are seasons, and give yourself permission. Don't feel bad. And wherever you are, honor that, and also bring levity, to bring that thread. Like, hopefully, I feel like today we're able to have a conversation that was intellectual in nature, that was heartfelt, and like, it was fun, and it's not too serious.
Yeah.
So there's a moment just to recognize, like, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't tighten up. And I have to catch myself that in winter. Sometimes you can be like, oh man, it's difficult. And like, oh man, like this stuff I'm working through. Okay, let's go have a beer. Let's go to a barbecue right now, and let's keep it balanced, because winter can be, it's probably the most like serious one, like when you're working through some deep stuff. And I know people can get caught up in their process. It's like, man, like, I know this is hard, but like, you don't need to be in this shit, in the muck, like 16 hours a day and then go to bed.
Yeah.
And I found it really good the last month to be more social and to do minor work in the morning and be like extremely disciplined and serious, to work in the afternoon, and at night to go out and have fun, and to kind of have this balance so it doesn't, get too heavy. And now I'm going to go have a beer by the lake, do some stand-up paddleboard.
Nice. Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us here in the Story. Thank you, Garrett, for being a part of it and being a part of this journey. It was always nice to do a three-way.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Yeah, a little podcast. And for those of you who are listening at home, I'm super curious as to what season you are in. I would love for you to leave us a comment. And if there's any questions you have for Phil or Garrett or myself, then by all means, you know where to leave them down below. All right. Bye, ladies and gentlemen, superheroes of the world.